Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is all about one tech company, and I'll discuss the details on if it's a buy and hold or if it's all hype. So y'all can see here I have Palantir pulled up under the Analyst tab in Thinkorswim. Now I do want to start off by saying I want this video to serve as more of a fact-based analysis rather than opinion-based speculation. So I want y'all to see the numbers, that way by the end of this video, you'll reach your own conclusion on if this stock is worth investing in. Alright, so to start off, we can see that Palantir is currently trading for $134.36. And we can see here on the right side, if we're looking at the fundamentals, it's going to show us a breakdown of what the stock actually was trading for from the past 5 years. So in September of 2020, we can see that the stock was trading in the range of anywhere from like $5 to $10. And we can see that actually persisted up until last year. And I'm going to go into more detail about that. But we can see here that they also provide you a detailed breakdown on the company. So just to kind of sum it up so that I'm not reading all of this verbatim, Palantir is a data analytics company that builds AI-powered software. And they help organizations integrate complex data sets into sectors like government. And we're going to talk a lot about the fact that they have government involvement. They also integrate a lot of their data into defense, finance, and the healthcare sectors as well. Now, the company was founded in 2003. You can see that here. But they utilized a direct public offering rather than a standard IPO in 2020. And they initially traded off the New York Stock Exchange, but as of November of 2024 last year, they began trading off the NASDAQ. So yeah, that's just a little bit of background information about the company for anyone unaware. Now, I will say there's been a lot of discussion on this stock, so I definitely wanted to make this video just to give a full breakdown. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the numbers down here. Okay, so as mentioned, Palantir does hold extensive contracts with the U.S. government agencies, and this plays a major role on national security and intelligence analysis. Now, for anyone who's completely unaware, one thing to keep in mind when we're taking a look at these numbers is that more than half of the company's revenue is drawn from federal sources. So when we analyze these numbers, make sure you're keeping that at the forefront. And you'll see why that matters in just a second. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start and take a look at the share values. Of course, we can see the EPS. We also see that they do not offer dividends, so this company does not provide dividends to shareholders. And we can also take a look at cash flow and all the good numbers here. Now, of course, here in Thinkorswim, you can take a look at the numbers if you wanted to by annual, or you can take a look at quarterly. If that's more of a concise breakdown for you, you can go ahead and click on this tab and compare it by quarter. Now, I do want to start with looking at Q1 from 2025 of this year, because obviously this is the most relevant data that we have other than Q2, but of course Q2 won't be reported until later next month. So when we look at Q1, one of the things that stands out to me is that the Q1 earnings reports results blew past expectations completely. Now, when we're discussing growth and profitability, so their Q1 data definitely presents a lot of profitability highlights. And one that stands out is that there's been 39% YOY revenue growth to $884 million. And the EPS matching estimate at 8 cents also ties along with that. Now, notably, the U.S. government revenue surged 55%, and the U.S. commercial aspect of this increased by 71%. Now, this also shows you there was some upbeat guidance forecasting because 36% revenue growth is now expected and free cash flow in the range of $1.6 to $1.8 billion in range. Now, the profit margins are also improving. So let me go ahead and show y'all what that looks like under annual. So we can see here in 2020, the return on equity was in the negatives, also in 2021. And then we can see in 2022, it remained negative as well. But in 2023, we saw a positive return on equity, and then 2024, of course, as well, was at 10.81. And with that in mind, the operating margin climbed. And what that also shows us is when we look at the net profit margin here, it rose from like 9.4 to 16.12, while the free cash flow margin hovers around 40%. So going back to it, when we take a look at Q1 of 2025, and again, that $884 million is going to be from the commercial segment. And as mentioned, the full year revenue guidance increased to $3.89 billion. So that's a 36% YOY increase. So if you're like, what does that really mean? What I'm saying is those are crazy numbers as far as soaring so quickly. And I'm going to show y'all what this looks like on the charts tab in just a second. But just understand, these are not typical numbers when we're looking at growth and we're talking about revenue and profitability. These numbers are pretty significant. Now, to discuss the earnings for Q2 of 2025, you can see most of this is actually blacked out as NA. And the reason being is that Palantir won't report Q2 earnings until next month in August. So currently, you won't see a lot of these numbers actually displayed. Now, I can mention that there is speculation that the consensus EPS for Q2's upcoming earnings report will be about 14 cents, and then the guidance is pointing at 934 to the range of 938 million in revenue. So investors will likely monitor commercial versus government growth and margin stability for this. Now, just to break this down in plain English for anyone wondering, the stock performance in technicals, this is setting fresh all-time highs near $144, which is maybe the notable surge for it. Now, this notable surge occurred after implementation of its AIP platform, and I'll discuss that in another video. However, the technical models emit mixed signals. Some are saying short-term indicators show sell signals, while long-term trends remain bullish. And the reason that is because there's some flag divergence between price and volume, and you'll see that again when we talk about it on the charts. But that's just a quick little overview of that. Now, you may be questioning what's driving the performance of these growth rates. Well, one main thing is that Palantir has returned 73 to 81% in 2025, outpacing the S&P 500 and its competitors like Nvidia. So not only has it beat the actual market, but it's also outperforming its peers. And this is definitely fueled by the government contract involvement and, of course, like the retail momentum. Now, the most recent catalysts that will show you the current revenue and net income growth rates are going to be attributed to the deal with Accenture Federal Services and the inclusion in the Russell 1000 pushed shares up 5%, recovering from a 9.4% drop tied to the index rebalancing. Now, once we start to look at the charts and we go into the technical levels and the market behavior on Palantir, you can see here I have it pulled up on the daily. So we're taking a look at it from 2020 up until this year of 2025. Now, back in 2020, we saw the stock was trading in the range from like $9 to $10. And for the most part, it stayed within that range for the last 4 years. But we saw a major surge in Palantir at the end of last year. That's where we've seen the majority of its growth. It was trading for about $26 in August, and then we can see by the end of last year in 2024, it was at the height of about $84. Now, one thing to keep in mind when we're looking at valuation and analyst outlook based upon the numbers we see on the stock, despite momentum, Wall Street remains cautious because it aggregates a consensus reduce rating driven by a 5 sell, 14 hold, and 4 buy rankings. So the mean 12-month target is about $89. And that's a 33% downside from the current of $134. Now, other consensus reduced with an average 12-month price of $89 and a 33% downside from present price. However, bullish voices with targets from like the 120 range have projected that Palantir may actually reach the 150s. Now, bearish arguments are focused on stretching the valuation. They see the PE over 210 and the EV sales at 72 times the rating is neutral, with $115 as the target. But again, that's the bearish sentiment of it. So everyone has different opinions. Some analysts are saying it's a bullish buy, others are saying it's a bearish sell. It really just depends on the person, because some are even warning of a $60 drop on Palantir within the next 6 to 8 months. Now, how likely that is to happen, we really can't say. We don't necessarily know. Now, when it comes to valuation and risks, it's important to note that there are rich multiples because the forward PE, again around 225 to 433, that are surrounding whether or not you consider this stock to be a buy and hold, or if it's one you feel like it's not worth buying at the time and you want to wait for it to drop from that 52-week high. That's always a good strategy as well. But some are anticipating that the stock will surge even higher. Now, analyst sentiment also has a wide forecasted range, as I just kind of discussed, but the concentration and exposure are super important to consider as well. Because again, 55% of its revenue is from the government, and policy shifts or budget changes could heavily impact the revenue on Palantir. So I'm saying all that to say that if you're not one to really track the news, if you do hold Palantir in your portfolio, you definitely should. Because any type of catalyst or change in contracts could boost momentum, but reliance on policy is always risky. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, when we consider the main risk factor for a lot of people, it is going to be the revenue stream from U.S. federal contracts. And as we know, budget cuts as seen earlier this year triggered 10% of the sell-off on Palantir. And then there is some hesitation when we look at the valuation premium because Palantir is at a level far above its peers. Now, when we look at customer concentration, for example, the top 3 to 5 clients represent 17% of the revenue growth that you'll see. And they also have some international exposure as well, but I won't go too deep into that. But to all in all sum it up, if we're looking at a scenario where there's bullish momentum, they're projecting the outcome for Palantir to rise to anywhere from $155 to $170 in that range, and that's going to be supported by institutional backing. But on the bearish side of momentum, they're saying that Palantir could have a sell-off to the range of $60 to $90 and fall in that territory if things were to go to the worst case scenario. Now, because of that, it's important to understand that you have to be strategic when you're looking at companies like this, because Palantir is a speculative stock, and in a lot of ways, it is a growth stock as well. Now, we can see that the growth is remaining strong when we look at it currently. Because of the strong quarterly performance, we can see the margin expansion, and that's heavily influenced by solid cash generation and, of course, it's AI. But I will point out that timing does matter. So near-term momentum could carry a rally, so you want to watch for upcoming Q2 earnings because that may heavily influence the direction that the stock will trade in. Now, if you are looking for like a core position within AI, Palantir may be worth adding to your portfolio just because, again, that AI and government technology sector can be managed if you understand the risks of the exposure. Now, a tactical strategy that some may consider is maybe to have covered calls or protective puts to hedge against downside risk. And you can consider layered entries as well. So you may want to start small if you're trying to buy whole shares of this and then build up if Palantir dips if you have an interest in doing it. But I will say avoid overconcentration. So even when you take a look at Market Watch here, you can see that if we take a look under Visualize, for anyone unaware, the boxes will show you how big the market cap is. And obviously Palantir is in IT as far as the sector, so we can see the market cap here. So although it's not clearly as big as like NVIDIA or Microsoft, it has displayed strong competition against NVIDIA. Now, looking ahead, one of the things that I can pinpoint that is super important to also consider is that the time frame is going to be a lens for how you trade it if you decide to enter into this stock. Personally, I don't trade options on Palantir. It's one of those things that I would do whole shares on, but again, I'm not telling anybody what to do. Now, for strategic investors, I will say be risk aware because you can establish a partial position with that hedging that I mentioned. But if you were to look at this short term, look for volatility because that will likely display through earnings and any type of developments that are catalysts as well. And then if you're looking for midterm with this stock, if AI revenue shows traction in Q2 when they report earnings, the sentiment may shift more positive, of course. Now, long term, sustained margins and revenue growth could validate premiums, but multiples must compress in order for that to be all the way accurate for the best possible result in your portfolio. So for anyone wondering, again, in early August, they're reporting it August 4th. So the guidance updates on commercial, international growth, and government contracts will also be displayed. So you'll see exactly what's going on with the company. And we'll also have some more clarity on the defense budget because the signals from US Congress about spending could shift sentiment dramatically. So is Palantir a buy or a sell? It really depends on your investment outlook and projections. Some may say buy if you believe in AI-driven growth companies, government spending, and accepting near-term volatility at current valuations. Now, some may say hold to sell if you're wary of the multiples, dependency on a few clients, and potential for budget pressures, because those targets to like the $100 range seem more realistic if you're looking for a sell. But y'all, keep in mind that there's no actual time period set on that, and these are just speculations. So now quickly, just to give y'all my opinion on it, Palantir is one that you may buy if you are one to back the AI play. Now, if you're also one to employ a defensive structure via hedges or tiered entry, Palantir may be perfect for you as well. Personally, I will say hold with caution if you are monitoring execution, valuation, and policy clarity is one of the things you're trying to get full understanding on. I would say then, of course, move with caution. But if you're one to disagree with the premium pricing, you may decide to sell or reduce, and you can seek less binary exposure or need liquidity ahead of potential market downturns with other stocks. So really, it's just dependent on you as a trader and what you feel is going to be worth the investment. Now, if I'm just providing my opinion on this, that bullish sentiment is looking favorable that Palantir could climb to the 150 range, and analysts have projected it to reach anywhere to 150 to 170. But again, on the bearish side, they also are projecting it to fall back down to the $100 range. So it's one of those things where you have to do your own research and decide for yourself. So Palantir stands at a middle ground if you ask me, and the underlying fundamentals, they show strong growth as I showed y'all. The margins, cash flow, all of that is excellent, at least as of recent. But the valuation assumes near perfect execution and sustained external factors. So we got to consider that for Q2. So we just have to wait to see those numbers. So essentially, all in all, Palantir offers high growth appeal measured by valuation risks. And the main thing that I want people to take from this video is that a partial allocation with hedging strategies and disciplined position sizing, it could leverage upside while limiting drawdown. So if you're just looking for one tip from this video, that's the main thing to take away. So if you're one to want to allocate modestly, use hedging to reduce volatility impacts and recalibrate your position post Q2 earnings based on the commercial traction and margin trends that you see they report. So I hope that makes sense. So yeah, y'all, that's pretty much all that I wanted to cover in this video. Y'all let me know what y'all think, y'all opinion on this. If you've invested in Palantir, if you feel like it's not worth investing in, go ahead and let me know what you think. But that'll pretty much do it for this video. If you found any of this information to be helpful, feel free to leave me a comment down below. As always, I thank y'all so much for watching. And of course, I'll see y'all in my next one.